Croeso, hello, welcome to the latest episode of RobRyanRed, the Wrexham podcast brought to you in association with Red 10 People Development. Now, it's just me for the intro this week. Anyway, Nath is off in Istanbul, working hard. I've been left alone, but we were together on Tuesday night to watch Wrexham against Huddersfield in League One. Wrexham celebrating their 160th anniversary with a 0-0 draw. But I think it very much was one of those draws that did feel like a point gained rather than two lost. Wrexham, we're a better team in the first half. Huddersfield, by far the better team in the second half. I think both teams cancelled each other out. I think it was a fair result. And, 5 years ago, Wrexham were National League and Huddersfield were in the Premier League 5 or 6 years ago, wasn't it? So, we can be very happy with how things are going at the moment. I think as well, if you look back at the weekend win over Rotherham, to take 4 points from those two games is a very productive return. Obviously, we always want to see us do as well as possible, but you should be very very positive still, given what we saw on Tuesday night. Huddersfield so well drilled defensively. I thought Wrexham as well were very good defensively. I know Ryan Barnett got the official Stadium Man of the match. I would have given it to Ollie Palmer. I thought he was excellent. He did really well in terms of his work rate, defensive duties as well. Some really nice hold-up play, just sort of that dogged, ugly stuff, and kind of proven why he did get that contract that maybe not all of us were so sure about a couple of weeks ago. But the mood is quite positive. Like we said, Wrexham celebrating their 160th anniversary. Thank you to everyone who showed our posts some love on socials about that one. You can follow us, RobRyanRed, on X, Instagram. You know where else we are as well, at gmail.com if you want to get questions in for any future episode. We're aiming to kind of do the mailbags during those weeks before the international break, where there's not a weekend game to preview, because like we said on last week's podcast, we completely forgot to do any previews for the two games that were on the horizon. We have got, like I said, guests coming up. Tash will be joining us to talk all things Charlton Athletic. She's a friend of the show. I think she's been on 3 times before, speaking about Elliot Lee, George Dobson and Owen O'Connell. We will ask her about Charlton this weekend. There's going to be all eyes and a few famous YouTubers as well. I'm not talking about Nathan's vlogs in Vancouver when I say that either. Although he is as hated as Mark Goldbridge. And then also speak about Connor Wickham. There's rumours doing the rounds anyway that Wrexham could be in the market for a free agent. Phil Parkinson confirmed after the game, the 0-0 draw of Huddersfield, that Wrexham could be in the market for a free agent. If you're looking at potential striker options there, Connor Wickham is maybe the most eligible of all the options. Of course, if you look at his Wikipedia CV, you might not be too overwhelmed, but he's younger than I thought, he's only 31. We'll get onto that. Knowing got our luck, any new transfer will be announced by the time this podcast even goes out, and we will be slow sports news once again. But we'll ask her about Connor Wickham. His last club was Charlton Athletic. That follows on from the fact that Stephen Fletcher wasn't in the squad on Tuesday night. Will Boyle replaced him on the bench. Stephen Fletcher, sounds like he's got a bit of an injury, and it's more severe than was maybe first anticipated on that one. We'll have to wait and see for the proper diagnosis and prognosis. But given that Wrexham are already out without Jack Marriott now for 4 months, that was also confirmed, wasn't it, after we spoke so glowingly of him on last week's podcast. There's a prospect that he could be without 2 of the strikers. And while we always joke on the podcast about how over encumbered we are with attacking options, we're now in a position where we're looking quite light again. And drastic measures. Could you recall Dolby or Billy Waters? Don't know the ins and outs of those contracts, so it's difficult to speculate. I'd argue that would either of them actually come in and do a job at League One level? I'm not so convinced, because they didn't do it at League Two level. So free agent wouldn't be a surprise if Wrexham did make a move for one. I guess the other alternatives up there would be play Elliot Lee or James McLean as a striker, potentially if required. We did see Mo Farl feature from the bench against Huddersfield. It still looks very raw, very difficult for him to impose himself. And I think we've said as well, in these sort of games, like the Huddersfield game, very difficult for someone to come on and make a positive impact, because it's just the way the game's going. First of all, against Huddersfield, in the case of Mo Farl, he was coming on against a very well-drilled defence, one of the best defences in League One. They were really experienced. They read the game well. They bullied Wrexham for large amounts of the game. There's only two openings in the whole match where it looked like we could even really have an opportunity to test Chapman in the Huddersfield Town goal. So it was difficult for Fall to come on in that instance. He was also coming on for Ollie Palmer, which I get is the like-for-like substitution, but I would have kept Palmer on. I thought, like I said, he played really well. And yeah, he just didn't really get too much of a sniff. He did as well as he could do, I think, given the circumstances. But, strikers are always going to be judged on their goals and their contribution in the attacking third. So yeah, a little unfortunate there, but surely we've got to see Mo Farl involved a bit more in the weeks ahead. Who knows? Charlton away this weekend. Also, massive shout out to a few of you we saw at the ground. Myself and Nath were both in the Tech End on Tuesday night. He had my spare season ticket. I was also on Radio Wales as well before the match. So thank you to anyone who tuned into that to get a very brief pre-match preview. That was with Paul Rutherford. That was good fun. Nice to meet a few of you. Wayne was one of the people I met before the match. He was chatting. I mean, Wayne, you are my new favourite listener because you said how much you hated fantasy football as well. So, Nath, if you're listening to this, axe it. I know it divides a lot of opinion. It's my podcast this week. There'll be no further mentions of fantasy football, sorry. And someone spoke to me on the way back to the car. Don't know who you were, but yeah, thank you very much for your kind words as well. And yeah, thank you to all of you tuning in. As always, wherever you are in the world, like we said, Red 10 People Development, Hypnotic, thank you to both of them for continuing to support the podcast. We'll get properly on with the show now. Myself and Tash looking ahead to this weekend's Wrexham away day to face Charlton Athletic. Here is what we had to say about that one.
RobRyanRed.
So Tash, thanks very much for joining us. We were just joking then that you've been on the podcast, I think, 3 times before when we signed Elliot Lee, Owen O'Connell and George Dobson. First time we were in the National League. The second time was National League. Third time we were in League 2. Now we're in League 1 and Charlton are still there as well. How are things being a Charlton fan right now in 2024?
Well, I think you summed it up pretty well, to be honest. Yeah, it's crazy because that doesn't feel like that long ago, but obviously so much has happened for you guys, and I sort of feel like for the majority of that time we have very much stood still. Last season in particular was an interesting one. Finished 16th in League One, which was, I think, our lowest ever finish. So that sort of says everything that you need to know. But yeah, this season it's a lot better. Obviously, looking at the table, you think, oh, we're mid-table again, but there is a lot more to it than that. A lot of stuff has changed. So yeah, I'm more positive than, if you told me 2 years ago, oh yeah, you'll still be in League One and mid-table, I don't think I'd have been very happy. But actually, there's more to the story, and yeah, we're doing okay.
I guess a question we like to ask rival fans is because we've been away for so long, it's actually quite hard to know who thinks they should be in League One and which teams feel they're punching above their weight, which ones feel they're underachieving. For a generation of us, we grew up and Charlton were in the Premier League. A lot of that time, they were at least in the Championship. From a Charlton point of view, I mean, where do you sort of see yourself as a club? Do you think you're still sort of a Championship club at heart, or are you kind of accepting that maybe League One might be your new home for a while now?
It's a funny one because I think, for a long time when we started dropping down the leagues, and because we got relegated from the Premier League in 2007, so a long time ago. Some of your listeners are probably thinking like, God, that's ages ago, but to me it feels like 5 minutes. But yeah, and I think in the beginning, I think most clubs are guilty of it, where you do have this sort of sense of entitlement and you think, we've proven that we can punch with the best of them. So, but football moves quickly and the Premier League is a very different beast to what it was when we left. So, and even the Championship is different now. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen it, like it's unbelievably competitive, and it almost is, to coin the phrase everyone uses, it is a mini Premier League now, I think, in the sense that it's got that core at the top that are always going to be going up and down. And, it's rare to have a team that actually punch above their weight and break that mould. But for us, I think Now we're a lot humbler. I think there still is that side of we shouldn't have been in this league for as long as we have. And most of that is down to the ownership issues that we've had. I'm sure you and all the listeners have heard about Roland Duchâtelet and, you know, his exploits with the club. And he is actually still involved because he still owns the ground and the training ground. So although we have had a number of different owners since him that actually run the football club, he's always been in the background, has remained an issue. So playing with all those different things, it's put a lot of decent investors off of buying us because he's asking for like a crazy amount of money for the Valley. I think because he knows it's in London and he could potentially get a lot of that if it wasn't a football stadium. So there's been that in the background too. But the footballing side of it has categorically not been good enough. And I think that's fair enough to say. Like, we got promoted from League One the last time was 2019 when we beat Sunderland at Wembley. And being back in the Championship, we're under Lee Bowyer. We had some really good players in there. That was sort of like the Johnny Williams, that sort of era, Joe Aribo. But unfortunately, because of the situation we are in with our owner, we couldn't hold on to a lot of those players. You know, they've all moved on to different clubs, and that's sort of been our story since getting relegated from the Premier League. Is we've always started building something and then it almost inevitably becomes like crashing down. So I think in terms of the fan base, though, like, I think we all know that we want to be in the Championship, and that is the club's goal. You know, being in the Premier League would be lovely, but being realistic, I think the size of our club, and, you know, we'll get onto the crowd selling out potentially for the first time in ages in a bit. But that, to me, like, the Valley most of the time is quite empty. But when things start clicking again, all those people do come back. And there is that, you know, ability to make it a big thing again and to be a big club again. So to answer your question, I would say a lot of us want to be in the Championship, but there is no divine right to be in it because we've not been good enough. The players haven't been good enough, and but hopefully we're moving in the right direction now.
Yeah, I guess that's quite similar to us when we were in the National League and we wanted to be in the Football League. We felt that was our home, but the harsh reality was we were there for 15 years. So by that logic, you are a National League club. You might, you know, sort of talk about back in our day, we used to be a Football League club, but the harsh reality is we weren't. And it's also a good point you that make there on the stadium, because stadium renovation is a hot topic at Wrexham. You know, there is every week there's a new capacity being thrown about how big could the racecourse one day get. And you've got to remember, if you ever sort of plateau or fall down the leagues again, that having a big stadium, well, it looks even bigger when it's not full, doesn't it? So I'm sure you know all about that. Looking at this season then, mid-table, like I said, at the moment, still very early days, so things can change very quickly. What were your expectations realistically heading into the campaign?
So, as I say, last season we finished 16th, so the bar was in hell, to be honest. But I think because Nathan Jones came in at the latter end of the season, and I'm not joking when I say that I think he's probably the first manager since Bowyer where I'm like, this guy actually knows what he's doing. And I know it sounds silly, but he's actually a coach and he's a proper manager. He's not just going to come in and everyone else dictates who the players are and all that sort of stuff. He's gone, no, I want these people and I want to do it like this. And that's been very refreshing. But as you've seen with Wrexham, these things take time and you can't jump in and he's going to come in. And I know he did it with Luton, but as in he went from League Two and went all the way up. But again, that took time. It wasn't an overnight thing. It's trial and error. It's getting the personnel in, getting rid of the deadwood and getting things clicking and dealing with everything else that goes on, like injuries. So I think I personally went into the season thinking if we can mount a playoff push, you know, I would love to get promoted, but if we can mount a playoff push, then I'm happy with that. And if it means that we've got to wait until next season to go up in the automatics, then that's fine by me, because I think when we went up last time, as I said, we had the building blocks there, but it was never going to get added to. And that was sort of like, you might as well have not got promoted because you're sort of going straight back down and doing the whole thing again. So I would rather spend the time, make things right, build that squad like you guys have. And then, you know, when you go up, you are ready for it.
I guess that is like maybe a wider question for Wrexham fans is, yeah, we're daring to dream at the moment because we're in a very good position, and why not? Why not back to back to back? How big would you say that gulf is between Championship and League One? Because there is that fear that, I mean, we're very pessimistic on this podcast anyway. We thought, League One would be our limit. But if, say, and we're getting very far ahead of ourselves now, if, say, Wrexham did in the next couple of years find themselves in the Championship, do you think that is like a massive gulf in quality that we wouldn't have been sort of prepared for yet or sort of faced so far?
I'd say obviously it's very different to League One and League Two. I mean, you've probably noticed the difference between League Two and League One already. I know you guys are doing very well, but you still can see that it is a tougher standard. Like Huddersfield last night, they're a well-engined side. Like they're not as easy to break down as some of the teams that you can get in League Two. But I think in terms of if you were to get into the Championship, okay, you've got people come down from the Premier League that have a lot of money, but again, that's not something that's going to worry you guys too much because you're in a good position. But I think you'd be okay. I mean, the obvious example is Ipswich, isn't it? Because they spent a long time getting out of League One, sort of thought that when they got relegated, they'd just be like, okay, cool, let's spend a bit of money and then we'll go up and everything's going to be fine. But it took them a little bit of time. But then when things did click and then they got Kieran McKenna, obviously then, it's worked brilliantly and they carried that momentum up into the Championship. So there's no reason why you can't. I think the example that I would look at is Portsmouth, because I know it's early days, but their season looks written off already. And it's crazy because I didn't think they were the most amazing side I've ever seen in League One. Don't get me wrong, because I think the standard was quite low last year, which is damning on us because we finished 16th. But, they got rid of a lot of their squad players, which on paper you think, okay, that's actually not a bad decision as long as you replace them properly. And they've gone up and then they've got loads of injuries and shock horror, they're not doing very well. And that's not Mousinho's fault. I think it's just, they just weren't prepared enough. So answer to your question is, I think you would be fine with your history and the people you've got behind the scenes. I think you're not fools. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to go up and make that mistake of what we did. So I think you would be fine, honestly.
Don't do a Charlton. That'll be the message if we ever do get up. I mean, so we spoke about the season so far that you would have been happy with the playoff push. Like we said at the time of recording, you are mid-table, but 11th place. To be ahead of Peterborough, for example, and there's far worse teams who are expected to do well. You look at Rotherham, you look at Bolton. So 2 wins also can quickly change the picture. The season so far, then, I mean, if you achieve anything this season, you were the first team to beat Birmingham, and of course that game was. There was the pre-match comments, wasn't there, about sort of the Birmingham defender. Nathan Jones came out with a great comeback to that. What has the season been like performance-wise from Charlton? Have you seen enough encouragement, or are the fans? Do you deserve to be mid-table? Do you think that's a fair reflection, or do you think there is more promise in this squad? Because, like you said, you have got a very, very talented squad on its day. It looks like you've got some really good individual players.
Yeah, make sure your players don't say anything like that, or actually do, because apparently we put Bielik, because Bielik played for us in our promotion year in 2019, so it made it even better. But
so if anyone doesn't know, he basically what did he say? He basically said that the league was too easy for Birmingham or something. Did he?
Yeah, and he said that in the Championship they're going to be a different beast, and basically saying we are better than everyone else.
We're already promoted. We're already looking at the Championship. Yeah,
basically, yeah. And they're top of the league. I get that. They spent a lot of money. Everything's great. I mean, their manager's comments about us spending a lot of money, I've not laughed that much in a while, because we have by League One standards, not by your standards, but I mean, so they then stuck his quotes up in the changing room to sort of rile the Charlton players up before, and that worked a treat. So, yeah, if anyone wants to do any trash talking before Saturday, go ahead. But, yeah, what was your question? Sorry, I
can't remember. How's the season been so far? What have you made of it? I mean, like I said, that's the standout positive result, isn't it?
Yeah.
At least.
I think that game, don't get me wrong, I don't think we played the prettiest football, but we completely closed Birmingham out. And I sort of thought, well, if we can do that against, the Galacticos, then I feel like there's no reason why anyone else in this league, we can't compete with them. And genuinely every game that I've seen, probably apart from Blackpool, which I didn't go to, but apparently we weren't great in that. Second half, we were a bit better. But yeah, Steve Bruce's time wasters did a job on us. But aside from that and the Bristol Rovers game, and we did have a run of losing 3 games, aside from that, I feel like we've competed well, and there's definitely been games where we should have won. Stockport the weekend, we conceded a very silly penalty. It was just Will Mannion was left exposed and he came out and clattered one of their players, can't remember who now, but yeah, and then they scored an early penalty, and then the rest of the game is we've created so much and it's probably the best performance we've had this season, but we've managed to score, but we haven't been able to find the winner. And it, then last night it was completely different. It was probably Barnsley with a better team, but we scored in the 93rd minute to go ahead, and then we threw it away 2 minutes later. So it was a short-lived bit of jubilation. But yeah, it's to answer your question, I think that there is the foundations there to do something. Like the players that we brought in, like Luke Berry, for example, hasn't really started this season, but he came on yesterday and scored 2 goals. Chuck Saniko is going to come back from injury. We've got Miles Leeburn back, who is going to take him a while to get back into it because he had a really bad injury, literally like last November, so he's not played or started for a long time. But getting those people back, and then plus what we've got on top, I think we've got enough squad depth to be able to push. Whereas the last couple of seasons, we've really lacked that. If we were missing, for example, like Alfie May when he was here, or George Dobson, then we would really notice it and it would be a struggle. Whereas now we're not so reliant on individuals, which as much as I would have probably liked to have kept Alfie May and Dobson, it's better that way, that we're not so reliant on individuals. So yeah, I'm happy with it. Like, as I say, like, I would rather Nathan Jones be in charge and design his squad and do what he wants to do, because he's proven himself before. Whereas before it was like our director of football, who doesn't have a great reputation at the club for bringing in people, and has sort of wasted our time bringing in third-rate loans of people that now don't have a club or have dropped the league. So yeah, we're on the way to doing something good. But as I said, I think it won't be this season. I think it'll be the one after we do something.
You mentioned 2 players that are interesting, because I think Alfie May and George Dobson, there's kind of going to be a link here loosely. Because obviously we had you on to speak about George Dobson, but that's before we kind of knew about him as a player, what to expect from him. I don't think Wrexham fans, not all of us, I didn't anyway, expect him to be in the starting lineup straight away. And he's been our best player this season. He's just exactly what you'll know about. He gives everything every single game. There was a concern he could be suspended for this game because he was 1 yellow card away, but he missed that threshold against Huddersfield. So he will be fit to return to the Valley this weekend. I was going to ask what type of reception you think he'll receive. And I guess, interestingly enough, what type of reception did Alfie May receive when he returned with Birmingham? Do you think they'll have... I mean, first of all, what was Alfie May's like, and what do you think George Dobson's will be like?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. I feel like with football fans, you are always going to get a section that just because they're an ex-player, they're going to boo them. Whatever the context is, they're just like, I don't like you anymore because you're not Charlton, so we're just going to boo you. So there was like smatterings of boos around the Valley when Alfie May was playing. But I think for the most part, to be honest, people were like, do you know what, it didn't work out, and that's okay. Like, I'm not going to begrudge you for going to Birmingham. It's just one of those things. And, if we were sitting rock bottom of League One, I might feel a little bit differently. But, we're doing okay without him, and he's having fun at Birmingham. So to me, I'm like, I don't think there's a reason to hold a grudge. And he went off at half time and didn't score. So, no love lost. But for George, I think you would have known, and I think I said this on the pod last time, like, there were so many Chinese whispers around George Dobson and what happened with the club and why he left, and Hungary stuff, and then it didn't happen, and then he's cancelled that, so is he going to come back? And then of course he signed with you. To be honest, like my mindset with it is he got treated like absolute rubbish, for want of a better word, in the latter stages of him being there, like being told that when his contract was running out and he just wanted a little bit more money, that he wasn't a priority, which is a joke, because not only was he our captain, as you would have seen, he works his arse off. And even if you don't think he's the most technically gifted player in the world, at that time, we needed a personality like him. So for the club to turn around and be like, we're not bothered, then that didn't go great. But of course, from the outside looking in, when you don't really know the context, or people will go, well, he's moved from Charlton to Wrexham, he just wants more money, he just wants to do this, that and the other, which I think is unfair. I do think that there will be a portion of people that will boo, but I don't think it's not going to be everyone on their feet like absolutely heckling him, because he doesn't deserve that. But yeah, there's always going to be a section of people that just think he sort of, parred us off. But yeah, and it's not the case.
Again, the links aren't just there. You've got Phil Parkinson going back to the Valley. He was there, in charge for 3 years, maybe 2-3 years. And you had Elliot Lee, Owen O'Connell as well. I mean, just briefly on, I suppose, all three of them, how are they sort of remembered? If you want to start with Lee and O'Connell, because there's a reason ultimately they both dropped down to National League, I suppose, aren't they? That they were decent players, but not sorely missed whatsoever, really.
Yeah, it's like the ghosts of Charlton past. But yeah, and I will say that our ex-players do have a habit of scoring against us. It just always happens.
Fantastic.
So yeah, they don't enjoy. But yeah, I think with O'Connell, I'll start with him. I think, he didn't play for us long enough for it to really be anything that deep. I think I liked him. I actually thought it was a bit of a shame when he went, because he actually did quite well for us. I think he was injured for quite a bit of his spell with us, but I liked him. So I think, I feel like a lot of people won't actually remember that he played for us in the most respectful way possible, like just because we had so many chops and changes that year that, yeah, I think there's no grudge there. But Elliot Lee is slightly different in the way that obviously Robert Lee used to play for us, came like for our club. And I think when he signed, we really wanted him to do well. Like, I think he came on loan from Luton at first, and then we wanted him to do really well, and it just didn't click. And we've had that with a lot of players over the years, and I don't necessarily blame the player for that at all, because look at him, he's gone to Wrexham and he's done really well, and you guys love him, and I think that's great. I'd be surprised if anyone really feels anything like they need to give him any stick, because he tried his best, and that's all you can ask from someone. Parky, I think. It's funny because if you ask Sunderland fans about Parky, they'll be like, "Oh my god, like, don't talk about that man." But that was a period of our history where obviously we'd crashed down from the Premier League, sort of woken up in League One and been like, "What the hell?" And it wasn't the easiest time for the club behind the scenes either. So yeah, I don't think he did a bad job at Charlton at all. I just think he is inevitably compared to Chris Powell, who followed him. And he's a club legend, not just as a player, but because he got us promoted, and we did well in the Championship with him as well when we went up. So, yeah, it's always going to be like, it was sort of the era before Chris Powell came and drove it forward. But again, it's another one. Like, obviously, when he went to you guys when you were in the National League, I thought, well, that's a really good appointment, because he's got that, calibre of being able to get promoted from the lower leagues and like having that experience, but then drop down to National League, he'll be really good. And I'm not gonna lie, I was interested, and I am interested to see how he gets on in League One, because he has been that sort of Marmite manager where people either really love him or hate him. So, but yeah, they'll all get like good receptions, I think, to be honest. Like, I'd be surprised if anyone has an issue with anything.
Yeah, I mean, you even get that now with Parkinson. There's some people who everyone respects exactly what he's done, but there's still maybe a section of the fan base who don't really like the football. They're not. I mean, he's a great guy. He does a lot for the community. He seems like a really nice guy. But I think there is always that argument that perhaps at some point they might need to get someone a bit more fashionable. Not that I agree with that, but that's the way it is. We need someone who wears a turtleneck basically on the sideline, wears trainers, like yeah, basically. Another player, former Charlton, Connor Wickham. I mean, this could be outdated completely by the time this goes live. It might never come to fruition, but it was the moment we sat down in the racecourse on Tuesday night. Someone whispered to me, "Have you heard about Connor Wickham?" No, not since he played for Crystal Palace, really. He was last at Charlton. I messaged you about this. He only played, I think, 4 league games, because whenever you link to a football player, you have to go on their Wikipedia page. If you don't do that, then you've not done your research. What happened with Connor Wickham at Charlton, and why perhaps did he not play as much as we'd expect him to from the outside?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure he was a free agent, because he'd been at Forest Green. Obviously, I think they were in League Two at the time. I might be wrong about that. It might have been the end of their time in League One. But Yeah, obviously he has a lot of experience. He's a bit older now, but he is that big physical striker that we were missing at the back end of last season because Charlton, who, bless him, is always injured and is made of glass. We missed that physicality up top, and obviously when we were trying to get those scrappy wins where you are just firing the ball over the top and hoping it sticks, and we needed someone like that. And with Miles gone as well, that we needed a player like that. Having said that, when he got brought in, I don't think he was ever going to be a starter, to be honest with you. Purely because with Jones thinking, well, I'm going to have Lee Burn and Anike back soon. So I just sort of need someone to come in, and if a game needs that sort of player, then we can use him. He scored a really good goal at Cambridge away. Ball over the top, so controlled it. And it's just like, for someone that's quite a big lump, he's actually all right. So his touch is very good. And he does have that ability of sort of creating something out of nothing and bullying defenders off. So if that's the sort of player that you guys need, then he fits the bill well.
Sounds like Phil Parkinson player, that.
Indeed, yeah. Literally. So I think because Jones had Alfie May and he had Dan Carnu, I think he just thought, well, I'm not going to start a guy that, no offence, but he's not going to be here next season. So because we've got too many strikers. So I think that was why. But he did do a good job for us. I think he bagged an assist as well. I can't remember when. But yeah, he did okay. And I think obviously you guys are missing Jack Marriott now. I don't know what sort of like striker he is and whether that's a sort of direct replacement. But I think if you need bodies, then I think he's a good option, especially the free agents at the moment. He's a good choice.
And if we're looking ahead then maybe to this weekend, I mean, before we preview the match, I think we've sold out, like I said, our away allocation. You've sold, over 20,000? I think it is the best attended Charlton game since was that semi-final before the Sunderland game? Was that against Doncaster, Rotherham or something?
It was indeed,
On penalties,
Doncaster.
I seem to remember. Was it Darren Pratley or someone? I can't remember.
Darren Pratley, because it was 4-3 on aggregate. We won the first leg 2-1 at Keepmoat, and then they came to us, and they went ahead, and we were like, well, surely we're not going to throw this away. And then Darren Pratley pops up and toes it. I
genuinely remember it well. Sad, what a life I need to get. So it'll be the highest attended game since then at the Valley.
Yeah.
Obviously, you go as a home fan rather than as an away fan, but I'm sure you've had lots of friends who've gone to Charlton as away fans. They've asked you about it. What can we expect from the Valley? Because it's a long time since Wrexham have played there, and for a lot of our fans, this is a new one to tick off.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say my friend Joe would kill me if I didn't give his pub a plug. So the Riverside pub is very good to go to. It's only like 5-10 minutes from the ground. So I recommend starting there because unfortunately there's not actually that many pubs around the Valley anymore. There's the Royal Oak, that's a home fans pub predominantly. But, if you can get in and turn off the Welsh accent, then you might get away with it. But and the other ones, a lot of them shut down because of just low footfall because of where we sunk down the leagues, which is sad. But so I recommend that. But in terms of the stadium, I think personally, especially if you've been used to going to the non-league grounds that you have in the National League, and then even in League Two, there's some ones that you think, God, this shouldn't be in the EFL. No offence to them. But in terms of that, I think, I am biased, but I think it is one of the best away days in League One. And even in the Championship, it's all right. 27,000 seater stadium. And as you said, it's going to have a very big crowd. So, and, whatever portion of those are there just to watch Wrexham, then fine. As long as they don't score as long as they don't cheer when you score, it's fine by me. But the atmosphere should be good. But it's a great view from the away end as well, to be honest, because, I don't know many away grounds now where away fans do have the entire South Stand, the Jimmy Seed stand. And the acoustics in there are great as well because obviously you're all packed in. It's literally our longest existing stand, I'm pretty sure. It hasn't changed much over the years. Even when we left the Valley and then came back, it's still that original sort of thing. It does make you feel like you go back in time a little bit. It's what I've heard from Birmingham City fans anyway. But, hopefully they'll like that sort of. It's weird because it's a modern stadium, but it's also got a lot of throwback features about it.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like very it is a 90s stadium, so it will feel a little bit like that. But I think they'll like it. And it's a good place to go.
What have Charlton fans made of the sort of the circus around the game, I suppose? I think
Yeah.
we'll have mentioned in the original podcast part of the podcast, but there's obviously some notorious YouTubers there. There's going to be sort of a pre-match live show. There was
Yeah.
obviously that, was it in the tube station near the ground? There was sort of like a welcome to London, welcome to Charlton sort of poster that mocked up the welcome to Wrexham one.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Yeah.
it's just what you get when Wrexham are in town nowadays, whether you like it or loathe it, but it works because people do go to the ground and it adds a bit of a novelty and it's a freshness because all these teams for about 3 years now we've been playing teams. It's been teams playing Wrexham for the first time in ages. It's had this freshness to it and excitement. It's not just, no offense, Northampton turning up or teams you've been playing for years after years. What have you made of that? Do you wince a little bit, or is it kind of the excitement that you need at the Valley because you'd love to beat us?
I think, to be honest, like, I'm not against the idea of getting people in the ground. Like, I will never be against that. And yeah, okay, in an ideal world, it would be because people want to turn up and watch Charlton. But realistically, after the last nearly 20 years, I don't blame people for not wanting to come, even like loyal fans. I'm sort of like, do you know what? It's been pretty dire. So if, it takes something like this for people to come. And at the end of the day, I mean, I'm sure loads of people said this to you, but if people come and we get a result against you, people might come back. And it's just one of those things that, okay, it might not be the original reason they turn up is because they want to watch Charlton and Nathan Jones ball, but, it can snowball into something else. And I think it's just a classic football fan in me, and sort of more like traditionalist in that I'm not a massive fan of the whole sort of YouTuber, Mark Goldbridge thing. It cringes me out.
Podcasters as well, the worst, aren't they?
Yeah, the worst. But that's what so cringes me out. But at the end of the day, can I begrudge people for doing that? And also, I think the club, it was the other way around, and the club knew that this was coming, and they had the opportunity to get people through the door and to potentially get people interested in Charlton and know about us and put our name back out there because it's been buried for so long, then I think it's fine by me. But yeah, as I say, in an ideal world, it wouldn't be based around the YouTuber sort of vibe, but it is what it is, and that's what football is now. And yeah, if we win, it would be even more hilarious, because if there's day trippers coming to watch you, then I will just be there
give me your money, yeah. You mentioned that as well quickly before we get a prediction for the weekend. Nathan Jones ball. What type of football is it that Charlton play? What can we expect from you this weekend?
To be honest with you, I don't really have an answer to that because we seem to switch up all the time. I mean, there was, oh my God, at the start of the season, even though, it's really weird. At the start of the season, we had a really good run. I think we won our first 3 or 4 games, a really, really good run. And considering last season we literally won 1 away game or 2 away games, and it took us till November to do it. We got a few of them under our belt now, and we've shaken off a lot of hoodoos from last year, conceding late and all this sort of stuff like that, apart from last night. But yeah, I think at the beginning of the season, I don't know if you've heard of him, Ghassan Hadmay. So he was at Ipswich and then he went to Cambridge. Now, the bloke tries really hard and you can see that, but unfortunately he is not someone that you want up top. He can pick up the ball, but he can't keep it. And if a chance does come to him, he won't find it. It could be easy. I could score it, and bless him, he just can't convert. So a lot of the time, even though that was the case, we would still persist with hoofing it over the top, which was unbelievably frustrating because our fullbacks are great, when they're fully fit. So unfortunately, I don't think Kane Ramsey will be playing at the weekend because he suffered a knee injury, and we're all terrified that he'd done his ACL, but I don't think he has. I think he's just going to be out for a little while. But him, and then Josh Edwards on the other side, and then Thierry Small, who's Ramsey's backup, are fantastic. They've sort of been focusing a little bit more on defending, but that when they burst down those channels, they are very, very effective. Ramsey in particular is terrifying. And Tyrese Campbell as well, our winger, is also very good from the wings. So basically we have a lot of different dimensions of play. And to be honest, I don't think we've really nailed down what works best for us. When we're at home, we're a lot more possession based. That wasn't the case against Birmingham because we knew that on the ball, they're going to be better than us, right? So, but we managed to hit them on the counter and they really didn't like our press. So It depends what you guys set up with, to be honest with you. But yeah, we have
We
a
will
whole
just
range.
let you have the ball for the whole match,
So that's interesting.
basically,
Yeah.
and then we'll try hit you on the counter. So it could just be like that Simpsons meme where no one's sort of passing the ball and everyone just camped in their own half. Nothing might happen, but I think the onus will be on you lot to attack. And again, that's dangerous because you're going to have such a packed crowd. There'll be a real excitement every time you get on the ball and swarm forward. So I expect us to sit deep, absorb a lot of pressure, try and we work really well out of possession. But I suppose for any Wrexham fan listening, it sounds like it could be similar to Bolton, similar to Birmingham, similar to Rotherham away as well last weekend. And let's see, I suppose, how that one does transpire. The prediction then, I mean, this is the bit you'll be dreading. Are we having some optimism?
Yes, because the Stockport game we should have won, and we drew that 1-1. The Barnsley game last night, I mean, on balance, I don't think we should have won, but we conceded very late on to draw. So I think I'm sorry, but if we're not fired up to get this weekend, I give up. So I do think that we won't just, as you said, I don't think we're just going to sit back and be like, hello, Wrexham, come and have a go. I think we'll be going for it. At least I hope we do. So I think there'll be a lot of goals. But I know, like, you guys don't necessarily have the highest like scoring in when you do win. You're not like bagging 4 or 5. I mean, so especially if you're away from home. But I do think you'll score purely because our, you've got good attacking options, but also our main defender Lloyd Jones is out injured, and I think he will be injured for this weekend. And his aerial threat and he's our best defender, so he'll be a miss. It's a hard one,
Well, you said that Elliot Lee's certain to score, isn't he? By your logic, isn't he? So
that's true. Yeah, there's got to be at least one ex-player score, probably George Dobson. But and then I think that we will score, but I think we'll also concede. But we don't score a lot, so I'm going to go 2-1 Charlton.
Okay, you've heard it here first. I do reckon it'd be like a 1-1 draw. Again, which wouldn't be bad for us, considering we've had Rotherham away, had Huddersfield at home. 5 points on that wouldn't be too bad. But we will see. We'll see what happens this weekend. Tash, thank you very much for joining us. Let's put the friendship to one side for the weekend and pick it up next week.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on today's episode of RobRyanRed. We'll be back as usual next week. Nath will be joining us. We'll look back at the Charlton game. We'll look ahead to our next match as well, which, because this is a flawless podcast, I actually can't remember who it is. I've just Googled. Oh, it's Harrogate, isn't it? In the FA Cup, because that's the Sunday match. So we will get a preview for the Harrogate game on next week's pod. We'll look back whatever happens at the Valley. As always, massive thank you to you, the listeners, for tuning in wherever you are in the world. A reminder that you can get your emails into us. We'll read hopefully some of those out on next week's show. That's RobRyanRed@gmail.com, or you can get us from the contact page on RobRyanRed.com. Massive thank you to Red 10 People Development for their continued support of the podcast. And again, thank you to Wrexham-based band Hypnotic for the music, The Stings. Thank you very much again. Take care, and we'll see you again next time.
Wrexham AFC podcast with Nathan Salt and Rich Faye.